when we're trying to get higher levels of engagement.
Yeah, you don't want to kind of slow it right down and kind of kill the momentum. Right?
I mean,
Oh.
1 minute left.
Sure.
okay. Hey, Chair, so Bex has joined us. We'll be ready to start at 10:30, which it is.
See 10:30.
Yeah.
So welcome everybody. First of all, I'm going to make a preliminary apologies. This is my first time in the chair. Usually the last couple of times it's been virtually, so this is new for me. So, but it's nice to be with everybody. And I've got a little cheat sheet to follow, so that's also helpful. So. Welcome to this February 9th Planning Committee for the Qathet Regional District. We do recognize we're holding the meeting in the traditional territory of Salam and First Nation. First order of business is approval of the agenda. I have a mover. Seconder, Dr. Brander. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Oh yeah, you don't get to. I got to remember that, you too. But it's nice to be with everybody. Yeah, keep your hands down. So. All right, motion is carried. We'll move on to the adoption of the minutes. Do I have a mover for 9th Planning Committee? And a seconder. Director Brander, all those in favor? Motion carried. All right, moving on quickly here. Just check my notes. We do have apparently 2 delegations. One's on our agenda today, so we're going to invite them to make their presentation. I think it's remote today, and so we got them on the camera. We'll get you to state your name and the institution you're representing, and we have a 10-minute maximum time limit. I think you're going to see a timer going there, and hopefully you're prepared to go. It looks like we have a couple of people there. Questions will be asked, might be asked by the directors at the end, but it's, we're just going to keep that till we hear your presentation, and then if there's any motions or that'll be for the future. Oh, are you ready to rock?
Great. Yes. Thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. And thank you to the committee for having us today. I'll give a quick intro of everyone on our team before we jump into the presentation. So my name is Emily Ng. I'm with Trace Projects, and our director, David Jacobson, is here as well. We are the representing agents on behalf of the owners, Grasshopper Developments. And from Grasshopper Development side, I believe we have Mark Kaufman and Dave Tietzen. I'm not sure if they're here, maybe just by audio or they're just viewing. And of course, our landscape architect is here with us, David Stoyko, and he'll be sharing a presentation with us shortly. Just want to give a quick summary of why we're here today, of course, to present our simultaneous OCP and zoning bylaw amendment application. It's for the redesignation of the subject property from commercial recreation and manufactured home park to multifamily residential. We're proposing a total of approximately 177 single-family, ground-oriented, compact rancher-style homes spread over an area of approximately 39 acres, really to provide a form of housing that would fill a significant need for demographics currently underserved, such as seniors, empty nesters, and perhaps even young families as well. Now, we've heard from the neighbors and surrounding community about their concerns around higher density developments, increased traffic levels, and emergency accessibility along Nootka Street. All very valid concerns. And we intend to address those concerns by having qualified engineers complete a services capacity analysis and a traffic impact study. Those findings will then allow us to have thoughtful design meetings with the regional district and City of Powell River to discuss available options. Now, we've also heard the desire from the community to keep the Yarashuk Trail that currently cuts through the site as publicly accessible. So this is perfect time now to turn it over to David Stoyko, our landscape architect, to present our design and detail concepts. David, all yours.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having us. Happy to show what we have in store for this really great site. Hopefully everybody can see my screen here. This is, we've prepared just a really brief presentation from part of the slides from our submission package. As you can see, some of the key points of what we have selected to discuss. I wanted to just, first brief everybody really quickly on the site context. You probably are relatively familiar with the area. Originally, this was a 9-hole golf course in the region, and you can see where it's just on the edge of the city of Powell Riverland and the regional district boundary. Originally a golf course, it's been recently, fairly recently, started to change already to a developing site, and there's a current condition where phase 1, which was approved previously, has started some construction of homes, and what we're looking at here is as you know, a larger change to the overall site to kind of expand upon this concept and create a much larger, more integrated neighborhood. The character, obviously, of the landscape surrounding, we want to have this sort of integrated and a part of the overall concept. So this really is a fitting development within the larger area. We've got a number of design considerations that we've tried to use very carefully to help guide how we develop the site plans that you have seen. We wanted to first try to really create, I think, a lot of strong community ties. This is kind of important for within this development and the ties to the larger area around. And that's through, the connections, through the amenities, through the way that this site will fit in with the larger area. We also really feel strongly about finding ways to support local ecosystems, to find matters for stormwater, for natural plants, all these different elements to really thrive in this development and function properly, as well as creating some really great social spaces for people that are going to live here. And this is through creating a really, I think, important set of amenities and spaces that will be really functional and useful and lively for the residents that will be here. And from there, we've kind of ended up with a larger plan overall that helps to, I think, expand the vision for what this site can be. And we've got a lot of things going on here, really with trying to provide a number of, really carefully laid out homes that I think surround a central green space, that incorporate the trail, the existing trail that connects through the site, that has an excellent series of links to the outer edges, incorporates some really useful amenities for the residents here, and fits within the contours of the site, so that we're really trying to just softly and gently come in and create these spaces. As Emily mentioned, the statistics, we're looking at a total of 177 homes here. 10 or 12 of these are currently built, and we're looking at a number of new building sites. Some of these are in the already approved phase A, and the rest in the larger context of what we're trying to establish here. The typical lots are fairly small, but useful spaces where homes fit in, and everybody has a private yard. A lot of them either face onto smaller kind of internal driveway streets connected by a larger street network. In the center, we've got a really big community green space. There's some stormwater management aspects of what's going to be in there, but really the goal was to create a really large, well-connected series of green spaces that everybody can take advantage of, and that also sort of tie into the north-south trail here. There are a number of community amenities that we've designed in here that will have, beyond what's existing now, but larger building and recreational amenities to support the residents here. And you can see we've got a number of diagrams here to kind of outline how the programming all works. It includes a lot of things that are important, like buffering around the edges, so that as things change over time, we've got some really carefully buffered zones here with a lot of green space. It really fits in with the local context. Circulation being a really big and important thing to try and, provide vehicular, pedestrian, really livable spaces for people to access. you can see the community amenities are a big part of this site. So they're really a strong component and they take up a lot of the space and really are centralized and connected around. And the amount of green space and character that we have is also a really important thing. So it really kind of creates a site, I think, that is an attractive and useful place. And again, coming down to just the character and trying to fit in with the overall local environment, a lot of native plants, a lot of excellent tree canopy, tree cover, trying to really sort of softly and gently fit in and then create some great spaces. So overall, that's our presentation of how this development fits in, and hopefully I've done a fairly good job of communicating, what the character and what the spaces will really be. Thanks very much.
Thanks, David. So that concludes our presentation on our end, and so we're happy to pass this back to the committee for any questions you may have for us at this time.
Thank you. Good job on your timing, Director McCormick.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind. The first is, what percentage of these units will be rentals?
At this time, that's the owners of the development are still in discussions of that. Right now, I don't think there's plans for any rental, but that doesn't mean there won't be any. Again, that's up for the owners for discussion right now still.
Okay, so we would have an opportunity to contact the owner or discuss that with the owner. I'm concerned because we do have a housing needs report, which you referred to in your presentation. And of course, it calls for X number of housing units, 50%, to be rental, 50% to be, for sale. And of the 50% for rental, nearly another 50% is affordable. So I'm wondering how your project fits in with that scenario.
Well, at this time, like I said, I believe the owners are, they're in discussion sort of on the overall tenure of all of the homes to be built or proposed to be built. And I think that's going to go hand in hand with how this application moves forward and how our further discussions with planning and with the regional district carries on. The intent, of course, for these proposed homes, they are, like I had previously mentioned, they are compact, single family homes, and they are meant to be affordable in terms of purchases and long-term maintenance of these homes. The operational costs are supposed to be as low as we can get them to be, really to serve, again, the population that's either seniors or retirees, really people who, want to own a home, but may not have that large finance available to them to buy the larger homes currently in the area. And we really just want to, provide another option for the many out there who would like to either continue to enjoy living there or would like to move into this beautiful community.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Gisborne.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. In your presentation, you said phase 1 was approved previously. I'm wondering, what do you mean by phase 1? What is phase 1?
There's an area. Oh, go ahead, Emily, or?
No, sorry, I was just trying to get my audio up and go ahead.
Yeah, this area here was originally basically phase 1. You can see there's a property line here for this strip on the right-hand side of the drawing that right now they are building some of the buildings up at this upper corner of the original phase 1 that was applied for and approved.
Okay, because this is then I guess a question for our staff. My understanding is the manufactured home park is in the OCP, but there isn't anything approved in relation to our zoning bylaw with a phase 1. Is that correct? And maybe that's a question for our staff.
I think it looks to be a question for our manager of planning.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, phase 1, my understanding of it is the existing homes and the homes that are under development, and under the current zoning, 15 homes are permitted on the property. So that's phase one from my understanding.
Okay. Yeah, so that makes sense. That's 15, it's compliant with the zoning bylaw. The other question I have is, in your presentation, you show the Yarrowshuck Trail. It's included as green space in the property proposal. My understanding is that the Yarrowshuck Trail is provincial land. It's Ministry of Transportation. Is that correct?
Ms. Rodden?
Yes, that's correct. It's a Crown right-of-way.
Okay. Yeah, so it's provincial land is my understanding. And then I guess my third question is, if the OCP shows for a manufactured home park and a commercial recreation, why not make an application for a rezoning to try and conform to the OCP, as opposed to going like a full OCP and rezoning amendment, which is, in my opinion, kind of like a bigger hill to climb. So I'm just wondering why this route rather than, say, just going with a rezoning.
Ms. Rodden, any comments on the different approaches?
That's for the developer, but Ms. Rodden can help clarify my question if that helps.
Yeah, I'd like.
The applicant has had a number of meetings with planning staff, and their vision has been presented. And in order for their vision to become a reality, it would require an amendment to both bylaws as requested.
Okay. And another question I had actually very recently was someone asked me, how much are the current lots that are being developed being sold for? Because there's still a few more being built, and someone came up and said, well, how much are the lots right now? So that was my next question, was the current sale value of the lots that are going in, because that'll help me understand, the affordability aspect of it.
David Jacobson, I'm not sure if you have that information at your fingertips.
I'm afraid not. Hi, everybody. This is the first you're hearing of me, David Jacobson. I would have to defer to the client, the owners of the property, to understand exactly how their current sales are progressing and what their current pricing may be. I'm not sure if either of Dave or Mark could jump in.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Currently, the new homes that we're building are selling for $499,000. It's a manufactured home park setup. So obviously they're not buying the land, they just buy the home, and then they pay a monthly land lease fee.
Okay, that helps. And another thing I heard was that the current development, or the phase one, has a 55 plus restriction, but that's just what I heard. I'm not sure if there's any truth to it, and I figured I'd get it straight from you guys to find out, is it a 55 plus, or is it kind of open to all ages?
Anybody want to take a stab at that one?
Oh, Mark, you're muted.
I'm muted. Oh, sorry. It's 45 plus.
45 plus, okay. And I think that's the end of my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and Ms. Rodden, was there any other points you'd like to clarify from the discussion or the presentation?
I think it can wait until the report is on the agenda.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you for your presentation. Appreciate your time. So just at the start of the meeting, we were informed we have an unregistered delegation that's prepared to make representation, and it is at discretion of the committee. So I don't see any major opposition. I'd like to hear this delegation. So we'll get you to come up and introduce yourself, and I'm prepared to give another 10 minutes to this discussion for the delegation, I should say.
Morning. My name is Kathy Pednell. I live at 7423 Nootka Street, which is directly across the street from the proposed development. In 1999, we put a bylaw through. At that time, the community came together over large mass development. And here we are 23 years later, fighting for our rural community once again. Please think carefully as to what this development would mean for our rural community. As my neighbor Rob stated in his letter, increased traffic, risk to pets, wildlife and pedestrians, increased light and noise pollution, urban sprawl, and the climate changes that brings with it. And there will be significant environmental impacts that go along with this size of densification. I will state here that I am not against development, but I am an advocate for responsible development. The Nootka area has seen several new developments in the past 20 plus years. These developments have all taken into consideration the communities and the qualities of rural living. As stated in the request for decision report, the Qathet Regional Housing Report for Electoral Area B, the report projects a housing gap of 31 dwellings under Scenario 1 population projection, conservative estimate, and a gap of 145 units under the Scenario 2 projection, aggressive growth rate estimate for the year 2026. The applicant is proposing a total of 177 dwelling units for the subject parcel, which would far exceed the housing need for Area B under either scenario. I, for one, do not wish to be the proverbial sacrificial lamb. Area B encompasses a much larger area than just Upper Nootka Street. To expect this small rural neighborhood to pull all of Electoral Area B out of a housing shortage is absolute insanity. We are but a small portion of Electoral Area B. What has happened to our regional growth strategy? The Qathet board sent a letter to the city of Paul River requesting time for our regional growth strategy at the time that this property was under consideration for annexation. Are there plans for this regional growth strategy? Tenure has also not been stated. Currently, with the dwellings at 500,000, I don't think that those are what you would deem affordable housing. Again, stated in the request for decision report, the developer's proposal also states that it will preserve the Yarishuk right-of-way, or trail, as it's now being called. This provincial right-of-way is in fact legally 33 feet wide. In reference to the pictures of the trail in Trace project submission, our beloved road access is approximately 6 feet wide, directly across from the stormwater retention pond, which is in fact the widest part of the trail. The water retention ponds are directly on the provincial right-of-way. The developer does not own this land. If water retention ponds are necessary for this development, then they need to be on the landowner's property. This, in my opinion, is not preservation, but utilization. The neighborhood, as well as those from the city of Paul River, keep getting shoved aside with less and less access to the Penticton trails. People, dogs, horses, cyclists, and motorbikes all use this as an access point. 4 to 6 feet is insufficient. In closing, I will take excerpts directly from Electoral AB's OCP plan to provide for a range of residential development options which retain the qualities of residential peace and privacy, to retain the single dwelling emphasis in rural residential areas. As Qathet Regional District is the approving authority for OCP and zoning bylaw amendments, and as the public has on numerous previous occasions opposed such dense development, I am asking the Qathet board to deny this application and to ask the developer to head back to the drawing board for a development proposal that would reflect the rural values already existing in this long established neighborhood community. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move to any questions from the committee. Director Gisborne.
I have 2 questions. First, thank you for coming in. I know you've presented to the city in the past, and it's always a lot to come before councils and boards. My first question is, when talking about development, growth, and local regulation, there's a principle that I've been heard floated around, and it's based on 2 points. 1, that no neighborhood should be exempt from change, but 2, no neighborhood should be subjected to radical change. Is that a principle that you would be in line with?
Yes.
Okay. And the second one is our Area B OCP, which was adopted in 2013. It actually talks about rural lifestyle, and it's, rural is one of those things that everyone kind of has their own different definition of. But in the area BOCP, I found what they kind of was referring to, the residents at the time felt was rural. And it says a rural area is one in which the natural environment takes precedent over the built environment. Would you feel that's still true in your area?
Definitely. Like we have neighborhoods, we have neighbors. We don't have neighbors that if you want to see your neighbor, you have to make a point of going and seeing your neighbor. We like that. We like having neighbors. We like having land between our neighbors. We like the natural around us. We like our access to the trails. There's the kennels at the top of the hill, which is actually the last municipal property. They board horses. The horses go by, like we want the natural, we want the rural natural neighborhood. I'm not opposed to development. We've had development. They've built a beautiful subdivision in behind us, in the Yarshuk Estates. Large 1.5, I think on average, properties, well maintained, all with a rural aspect to them. We just want our rural neighborhood.
Those are my two questions. And
any other questions from the committee?
Yeah.
So, thank you for your presentation. A moment here. All right, moving on to unfinished business. Residential flexibility OCP amendments. This was postponed from the January 11th planning committee meeting. We have a motion.
Well, I guess it's still on the floor because it's unfinished, right? Yeah, does it need to be?
Does it require this motion?
Well, it's been postponed, so it needs to be renewed. So I would say we would require a mover and a seconder.
Okay, well, I'll move it to start the ball rolling.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Thank you. At the January meeting, I had suggested this motion with a second part, and that the second part was that the restriction on dwelling unit be redefined to be up to 5,000 square feet of residential space. And then that was put with a number, and that was put forward with the intention that if other directors had any other ideas for residential flexibility, we could add that to the list. This motion is now a little bit more broad, asking for staff to report on just residential flexibility. I still very much believe that we should be taking into consideration all aspects for residential flexibility. As I am aware, we're having at least one report, if not several reports coming back from staff on, secondary suites and different housing options. Myself, I think that the floor area ratio, building coverage ratio, it might actually allow more flexibility in our community, because our strategic plan, which we all have, actually has as one of our goals diversity in housing. And one of the challenges that all communities are facing right now is, as we get development pressures, what kind of housing is allowed into your neighborhood? And it's kind of going from the single family dwelling to, okay, well, let's shoehorn in the secondary suite, and then what is a tiny house? And it becomes quite difficult, because in the rural areas outside of the zoned areas that we have, it's completely flexible. It's, people build row houses or whatever it is that they want, but of course they're limited by their septic and of course water. The big question though, when it comes to area B, and I think this is true for a lot of the areas, is that rural definition. A rural area is one in which the natural environment takes precedence over the built environment. When I read that, I see that as like a lot size coverage, as how much of your lot is the built environment and how much of your lot is green space or agriculture or just natural environment. When we're looking at our housing needs assessment, they even pointed out that they weren't looking at the types of housing, they were looking at more of the size of housing and the number of bedrooms, because that was apparently more important than, whether it was an apartment, a duplex, or a single detached unit. What was important was size and number of bedrooms. And this also then comes back to that other development principle that I asked the delegation about, when talking about development, growth, and local regulation, there's a principle that I think we should all take into account. No neighborhood should be exempt from change, but no neighborhood should be subjected to radical change. The challenge is when our regulations don't change, that causes the neighborhood or the community to kind of stay a bit stagnant. And then only one property at a time will come in and make an application. And there's so much development pressure and such a great need for housing that it becomes radical change. So this motion about getting more residential flexibility is, how can we look at the why? And the why is, why do people want to protect the rural area? And what does that mean? And I think it has more to do with the lot size and how much of the property is necessarily being developed than it is about how many dwellings there are. Because right now, a dwelling unit can be a 10,000 square foot house, or it can be a 500 square foot tiny home. And it's the same thing. It's one dwelling. But when you can only have one, you build it bigger. But that's what I did on my farm. So I'm okay with the motion as it is, but as long, and it doesn't have to be a separate standalone report. It can be part of, the secondary dwelling and the other reports that we're getting back from staff. But I would really like to see the option of, one sec, I wrote it down. Because floor area ratio and or building coverage ratio. And that can then, we can then align our OCP and our zoning bylaws to then ensure that we're still meeting that why, that making sure areas are rural and yet still allowing for some more variation and diversity in housing. So I think that makes sense.
Any other comments on the motion?
Thanks, Chair. I believe the motion that was proposed by Dr. McCormick at an earlier meeting, requesting a report regarding housing will be broader and will include the issues presented by Gisborne's motion. I think at this point, there's no need for a secondary one. And I imagine, and we've got staff online here, I know they've heard Dr. Gisborne's concerns, and I have to believe that they will incorporate them into the report. So I don't think a second report is really necessary at this time.
Okay, thank you. McCormick.
Thank you, Chair. I believe the motion is redundant. As Director Brander has said, the motion that was approved by Committee of the Whole, just to refresh everyone's memory, recommends that the board have staff report back regarding solutions to mitigate the current shortage of housing in rural areas. And that the review consider best practices of other regional districts. Chair, if I may just ask staff if that would include OCP amendments, if they will be reviewed as part of the motion that's already, the review that's already been approved.
Maybe you can ask Manager of Planning.
Through the chair, thank you. Yes, we would review official community plans and zoning bylaws of the regional district as part of the resolution that's directed staff to prepare the report Director McCormick is referring to.
Thank you. In that case, I continue to believe that this motion is redundant because we've already asked for the work and approved a motion enabling that work to be done.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Gisborne again.
Thank you. Yeah, this motion was postponed from the planning committee last month, and that was discussed before the board passed the subsequent motion that is being discussed. My question for staff is, will that report include options to potentially replace, the dwelling unit restriction with lot size coverage and floor area ratio as an option in that report, or is that currently outside of the scope of what's been put forward?
Mr. Rodden again.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As I said, the scope would include looking at our current bylaws, and it includes looking at what other rural regional districts are doing. And it would include looking at options such as introducing restrictions on floor area. But I will say that currently, none of the regional district's bylaws have any restrictions on floor area. And so this would be a new area to look at.
Yeah, thank you. That's
just point of order. That's the couple of questions now. So do you have, it's an important subject, so we're prepared to carry on, but we can just try to get to your point. And we'll...
Okay. And I'd like to thank our manager of planning. And I think she pointed out something very important. Other regional districts and rural areas haven't done this. The floor area ratio, the lot size coverage is a discussion that's occurring within urban areas and how that affects urban centers. The intention of this discussion and this motion is how can that discussion take place for a rural area in the rural context? Because it's like an inverse. It's a different kind of thing because there's changes happening within urban cores. And the motion that was passed was, let's take a look at what other areas are doing or have done. What this motion is for us to say, let us be leaders. Rather than taking a look at what someone else has done and maybe follow along, this motion is, let's us be the ones being the tip of the spear in a rural area. That's the intention.
Yeah, and I see Ms. Rodden's hand up. Yep, go ahead.
Through the chair, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear in my comment preceding Director Gisborne's comments. And so I just want to clarify that most other jurisdictions in the province do regulate floor area. What I said was the qathet regional district's bylaws do not include any of those restrictions.
Okay, my apologies. Sorry for the confusion.
And thank you very much for the clarification, because that puts me on the right track as well.
Okay. Well, in that case, if there is a report coming forward that will have floor area ratio option, I'll be happy to we can leave this motion as is, as long as that is coming forward in a future date.
Thanks. So I guess we carry on. Is that, or do we have to vote? Right. Yes.
So
thank you.
we
We vote. Okay. So any other questions? No, we'll put it to
yes.
Okay. We'll put it to a vote then. All those in favor of this motion? All those opposed? Looks like it's defeated. Thank you for the discussion. We'll move on.
Sorry, Director Brender, Director McCormick, and Director Lennox opposed. Were you before? Yeah. Okay.
No, I was opposed to. Yeah, it was unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. So the items listed in the correspondence, there's quite a few of them here have been received, some of which may have actionable motions associated with them. Do we have any actionable motions in relation to this correspondence? Hearing none, we'll carry on. Moving on to number 8, reports, 8.1. We have a report here. I think it's right here. Yes. Thank you. Thanks for moving me along. Do we have a seconder, Director McCormick? All those in favor? Oh, sorry, a discussion on the matter. Just to make a few points. I read this report and the discussion, and it seems like all the considerations have been put in place to carry on with the application, and it was very informative for me. So with no discussion on the matter, have we voted on this yet? No. So we can call the question. All those in favor? Of course. Carried. 8.2. This is the application for simultaneous official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 7406 and 7440 Nootka Street in Electoral area. Thank you, Director McCormick.
I would move recommendation number 1.
Okay.
Sorry.
There's no ands between.
Yeah, I was going to ask about
so
the whole.
It is the entire motion all together.
Okay, then I would move that.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Director Brander, thank you. Discussion on the matter. Director Gisborne.
Yeah, I would have liked to have a bit of a discussion on this matter before putting forward a motion. That way we can figure out which direction we want to go with this application with some discussion, but here the motion is before us. The motion before us is that we will require that the applicant contact a qualified professional to complete the services capacity analysis. Then they'll have to do a traffic impact study, and then they'll host a public information meeting to present their proposed application following a completion of the services capacity analysis and the traffic impact study. That'll take the developer time and money. That'll take the community time, and of course, political energy and all around. That what would need to happen before we could even then go to the OCP amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment, which would then have to go through the process of first and second reading, and then public hearing and public engagement and so on and so forth. However, taking a look at the Area B official community plan, let's make sure I have the right paperwork. The rural area is one in which the natural environment takes precedent over the built environment. This proposal is a 12-fold increase from what's currently allowed. And the amount of green space is significantly less than 50%. I see that to be in contradiction with the Area B OCP. And I see that to be in contradiction to what the intention and the due consideration of the Nootka Street zoning bylaw was put in place for. It's a big mountain to get over, to go from 15 units to essentially 180, because that's what the zoning bylaw would allow. I see this motion as, sure, we could go down this route, but in the end, I think I know what the public's response is going to be. And I don't want to waste the developer's time with something that doesn't seem very likely to be successful. My question, I guess, for staff is, if the developer wanted to change their application, would they need to submit a completely fresh application with another $1,500 and go through this whole process again? Or is there, like, where's the part where we can sit down and negotiate and go like, okay, let's find out what the community does find palatable? Is that what part 3 would be for the public engagement? Or is it kind of a, this is what we get and ends up being yes or no? That's my question.
Thank you.
We don't have a lot of these in Area B.
Yeah, so Ms. Rodden.
Thank you, Chair. So it is a radical change for the neighborhood. Like the scale of change in density is large, which is why staff have made the recommendation we have. We think that the information that would be gained through these 2 studies would address most of the concerns raised by residents. And then when that information is available and the developer has the public information meeting with residents, it can be a more fulsome discussion. And if it may turn out that there's not a viable servicing approach to service 177 units, it may turn out that the traffic impacts are so great that an increase in that density and that number of people and potential vehicles may not support an application for that many units. And I think that only until we have that information, we can't fully review this application. and there is a need for housing, the opportunity to be gained and the benefit gained for the regional district in a rezoning at whatever density is possible and viable for the developer could fill a need. And this zoning application or rezoning application provides the opportunity for the regional district to require a housing agreement with the developer. And that would be an agreement that would be negotiated, that a certain proportion of the homes to be built would be rental, and a certain proportion of those would be maybe subsidized rental. So there are some benefits to be gained by the community. But until we have all of that information, I don't think it can move forward. Now, there is the option, there's 3 alternatives that staff included in the report on the last page of the report, page 86 of 138, and denying the application and requiring the developer to go back to the drawing board and develop an application that's more in keeping with the area BOCP is something that the committee could recommend to the board. But that would be an alternate motion.
Thank you. Director McCormick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can support the motion that is before us. We are not being asked to approve this development, but rather to receive it, subject to further reports to come, one about water and one about roads and traffic, and also a public meeting that would take place. The results of all of that would inform the documents that we would need to make a final decision whether or not to approve this. So I don't see by supporting this motion that we are in fact approving it. We are merely endorsing getting more information so that an informed decision can be made down the road. So I have no problem with supporting that. I think more information is better than less information, and that we should go ahead with this plan.
Thanks, Chair. I agree with Director McCormick, and I say we can't make decisions based on speculation. And so without proper information, it would be incorrect to make a decision other than to follow what our policies are. And we've been presented with an application. It's ticked all the boxes. I think we move forward from this. And then, like, again, Director McCormick stated, we're not making a decision about allowing it or not allowing it at this point. We're just saying, here's what the staff would like to have. They've included it in the motion, the different reports, and we'll have all sorts of information at the end of the day to make a proper decision.
Yeah, before I let you have your second round, I tend to agree that, for me, it's the same thing. I'd like to get as much information as I can to then vote with that full spectrum. And it sounds like most of the points that have been raised, which are quite valid, are part of that. Right. And so, again, we're not making the decision. We're just trying to get the information to make that decision. So at this point, I'm prepared to support it. To you again, Director Gisborne.
Thank you. There's a couple of things. One, Area B doesn't have an area-wide zoning bylaw. So when we get a housing needs assessment that says that we need between 31 and 145 new dwellings, we don't know how much of the area is actually getting more dwellings. I know of a number of areas where there's been some motorhomes and fifth wheels and there are new units coming in, but we at this board and our staff have no real idea where these things are. We do have a zoning bylaw in Nootka Street. We have one on Traff and we have one in Myrtle Pond. I don't think it's responsible of us to expect that the zoned areas to solve those housing issues for all of Area B, because those issues might already be solved, but that also then makes people a little bit anxious when, okay, we might get a zoning bylaw, but now that we're, under the magnifying glass, we might now be the next target for dwelling and density infill to meet the housing needs. We don't have all the information about water or traffic. That's true. We could pass this motion and get that information. But how much information do we need to make a decision? We heard from our planner that this is a radical change. My principle still stands. No neighborhood should be exempt from change, but no neighborhood should be subjected to radical change. We can get more information at the developer's expense, but the end result is still radical change. Doesn't matter which extra information comes along, that's it. So I'm actually not in favor of this motion because it moves us in a direction which the end result is still radical change to the neighborhood. So sure, we can get more information about water and traffic, but if it's radical change, my answer is still no.
Any other discussion on the matter? Hearing none, we'll put this to a vote. All those in favor of this motion in its entirety? All those opposed? One opposed. Motion is carried. Okay, I'm trying to keep moving here. No new business listed. I guess we move into question period. Press on the line.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I was going to ask a question, but I'll leave it for another time.
Okay.
In a different place.
Yes, no, okay. Yes, yeah. So members of the public, any questions? Yeah, see one back there? Maybe.
I'm not sure how, and I don't know the logistics of it all, but I'm not sure how you can actually walk through this process when we already know that the landowner has taken possession of land that's not yet. Our Yarshut Trail, as everybody refers to it, is literally 4 feet wide and widens out a little bit. But that is provincial property. It belongs to everybody. Water retention ponds, as demonstrated in their plan, are sitting on our property, not the landowners. Not only that, there's septic fields that are over top of it. It's a case of do it and ask for forgiveness. What's the saying? Fake forgiveness at later. I don't understand how a plan can go forward when the plan is so not even on the owner's property. How is that possible?
Well, maybe, thank you for your question. Maybe I can ask Ms. Rodden for some clarity around this for all of us.
Through the chair, yes, the motion that the committee has passed is simply to receive the application. The site plan is a proposal only at this point that's been received. And through the studies that will be done, if the board in turn adopts a resolution supporting the committee's motion, those studies would further define what the site plan would be, and the community consultation would as well. And in addition, neighboring jurisdictions or neighboring agencies and governments that have interests affected would also be referred the application at that point. And so that would include the city of Powell River and any interest or any impacts on their interests on the municipal owned portion of the road. Any other concerns they may have, it would be referred to the Ministry of Transportation. The width of that Crown right-of-way would be verified, and so the site plan as received is subject to changes, and it hasn't been approved in principle. It's simply received for more information to be collected as it moves through the application process.
Okay, so that's one more piece of information we need. Okay, thank you for the answer. I saw one more hand. Yeah.
I live beside this project for the last 15 years. And we are the ones who have had to direct attention to the irregularities we have found them. I'm the one who had to go to the transportation minister and find out where our road was. This work was done without permits in place years and years and years ago, and nobody noticed. I have the encroachment permit from 2008, which is for landscaping only. And recently we've noticed them excavating their septic field. Seems to be on one side and the houses are on the other. I have questions about that. Do these services traverse the public right of way? Were permits in place when this was done? Has anyone checked? I've asked, I'm in contact with the Ministry of Transportation right now to find out. That hole that they call water retention, which traverses the public right of way, is unsafe. And according to this permit, one must fence and make safe anything that encroaches on a public right of way. Because if someone falls in that hole, guess who's going to get sued?
Yeah, and totally appreciate your points.
It's
and
never been done.
Yeah, so is there a question for us?
The question is, as directors and such, who's watching what's going on? Who's checking? Is it us that have to come to you and say, hey, they're planning to put 55 houses? Did you know that? We had to direct attention to that. We are asking you, please, to be vigilant because many irregularities have occurred here in the past. And we're asking you to watch out, please, for our kids. We don't want to see tragedy. And we just want to make sure things are done properly and that no one's harmed.
Appreciate that. And your director is being vigilant. So sorry to answer for you. It's not really a question though.
I'm trying to be vigilant, but I am only one voice and one vote. So.
Yeah. Okay, so we don't have an in-camera session proposed. Looks like this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your attention. Okay,
one question before we go. In the region, actually,
technically no, but if you have,
you can ask a question now.
You can ask a question.
I'll ask it.
Not for the committee.